Good evening, everybody, and welcome. On behalf of Clifford Chance, I wanted to thank you all very much for coming. This is the second year that we have hosted the Inspirational Women in Law Awards with Next 100 Years, a project dedicated to achieving equality for women in law, and obviously a subject close to my heart. The Inspirational Women in Law Awards seek to identify and recognise individuals from across the legal profession who are leading the way in their areas of practice and working for the changes needed to ensure that women working in the law are able to thrive. It's fantastic to have so many of you here today to celebrate and be part of these wonderful achievements. And it's really inspiring to be surrounded by so many women across the legal profession. Things have changed a fair amount since I first qualified into the litigation department at Clifford Chance in 1997. At that point, there were no female partners in the group at all, and I was one of only a very small number of female lawyers who shared offices with one another so we didn't get in the way of the men. Now we have me as head of our department and 8 other female partners out of a total of 30, and we also have more than 50% female lawyers in a group of more than 100. But I'm always conscious that there's still more work to be done, and I'm sure most of you in the room will testify to that. The awards this evening are hosted in partnership with our gender parity network, Accelerate. That's so named because it's working to accelerate the pace of change toward achieving gender parity, and we have chapters in offices across the Clifford Chance network. I'd like to thank in particular Fanula and Laura, who are our UK co-chairs, standing at the back, as we're full to capacity tonight, and also Augusta, Assisi and Katie from the committee, who've also helped this evening. I'll hand over now to Dana Denis-Smith, who's founder of the Next 100 Years project, and she's going to kick off tonight's awards. Thank you all again for coming.
Wow, thank you so much for coming. What a great full room. I remember a few weeks ago I went to an event about being a founder, an entrepreneur, and I could hear from almost outside the hum, and the hum was not that of the voice of women. It was very much dominated by men, but we can't say that about women in law because we are the majority. And I think the point about these awards is to enable you to use your voice, to amplify, to give you visibility, to help you use your power to make change. I'm the founder of the Next 100 Years project, the project that inherited the legacy of the first 100 years. That project went about trying to tell you the history of women in law and how it is that for many hundreds of years we could not join the legal profession until the law was changed. Luckily that happened in 1919 and the rest is history. But I'd like to say that the most amazing thing that we witness today in our generation, and I want you to remember this every day, is that we are witnesses to history. It's not just that we collected the first 100 years, and some of the first are with us tonight. And I'd like to give a special thank you for being here to our first Lady Chief Justice in 750 years. In my lifetime, I witnessed history before. I witnessed the collapse of the Iron Curtain. I grew up behind it. I know what history means. I know what history means to stay in your heart. And I want you to treasure the history you are witnessing in our generation and make use of it. The women before us tried to do it. They were blocked in many ways, but they were alone, unlike us tonight. Look at this room full of women and men who want to celebrate our achievements, who are inspired by other women, and who wants to pave a new future for everybody in the legal profession. So I thank you all for being here tonight, and I don't want to keep you much longer because I think we have a lot of what we call celebration and inspiration tonight. The theme for 2023 is role models. Why? Because they matter, visibility matters, but because we have some of them among us, and I'm so privileged to be able to have a few of them speak to you tonight. Our awards are in 4 parts. As you may know, we don't like to follow fashion, we like to do it our own way. This is the point of innovation, I guess. And so we have 4 parts, and in between those 4 parts, we will introduce a few of our keynote speakers who will address you tonight. And To start us off, I would like to introduce a first. She's a first, and she's one of us as well. As I said, it's a privilege. So I'd like to introduce Anuja Dhir, judge, a first woman to sit at the Old Bailey as a non-white woman. So welcome, Anuja, to our awards.
It's lovely to see so many people here. Some of you new faces, some of you are familiar faces. And seeing a room full of people who are making a difference, supporting one another. And that is what the 100 Years of Women project is all about. It gives us a chance to come together like this, to encourage and to support and assist women from all backgrounds to succeed and fulfill their potential. And it's a chance to celebrate women too. It's a big change from when I qualified as a barrister in 1989. When people who look like me, female, non-white, state-educated, with no connections to the bar at all, and no real understanding of its ways and its traditions, were not welcomed with open arms. There was no talk of equality. There was no talk of diversity and inclusion. At that time, you were meant to fit in. And looking like this, well, I didn't. And in those situations, and we'll all face them in our lives, in our professional lives, when we think we've just kind of hit a brick wall, what we need is the support of the friends around us. You know the ones I mean, the ones who pick you up on the bad days and the ones who cheer you on the good days. For me, without a bit of luck and support, I wouldn't have stayed in the profession. I certainly wouldn't have thought of applying for Silk, nor would I have applied to become a judge, and I definitely wouldn't have applied to become a judge at the Old Bailey. Today, we have so much to celebrate, and today, this evening, is all about celebrating and the chance to acknowledge what has been achieved and to look forward to many of you here being our new pioneers and our new leaders. Those that will go on to build on what has already been achieved, promoting diversity, not just for the sake of it, but because we all know that we benefit from working together, and we benefit together from learning from each other. The next 100 years is the new project dedicated to achieving equality for all women in law. The project aims to accelerate the pace of change and to encourage collaboration across the whole of the legal profession, improving the visibility of women in law and supporting the women lawyers of the future. It also gives us a chance, doesn't it, to come together and to be together at events like this. Thank you to all the team led by Dana for making this happen. Before getting to the celebration part, I'm just going to start with a little bit of history. In 1903, Bertha Cave applied to Gray's Inn. She was rejected on the basis of her gender. She appealed to the House of Lords to have her case heard, and the proceedings lasted about 10 minutes. And the appeal was refused. It was argued that women were under a disability by reason of their sex. I have, I hope, coming up soon on the PowerPoint, I'll just see if it works, a picture which should come up in a moment. It's taken from the Sunday Times magazine in 1991. I wonder if that's possible. There it is. This is the front page, and at the side, it's a little bit small, but it's the picture of all the males in the judiciary, and that's what the judiciary looked like in 1991. And that was the year that I was called to the bar. And tonight, we have here with us the recent appointment, the First Lady Chief Justice, Baroness Carr of Walton-on-the-Hill. An appointment made in accordance with statute, which sets out the criteria for appointment, which is selection solely on merit. Baroness Carr has been a role model throughout her career, and tonight we all congratulate her on her appointment. And if that wasn't enough, sorry, I ought to have paused to allow people to clap. You're quite right, Baroness. As if that wasn't enough, Dame Ingrid Simler will be sworn in as a Justice of the Supreme Court on the 14th of November. Another cause for celebration. Baroness Carr and Ingrid Simler were called in 1987. In that year, 20% of the practicing bar were women. On one view, the fact that we are now 51% at qualification shows that we have come so far. On the other hand, we all know that there's a lot more to do, and that's why the next 100 Years project is so important. Many women have caring responsibilities which have an impact on their careers and career choices, and they're also a barrier that is hard to break through. Those are the times that we need the support that this organisation provides to help us through. And that's where the leaders come in as well. Leaders of sets of chambers, leaders in solicitors' firms, and leaders in the judiciary. Here are just a few things that I have learnt as a barrister and as a judge. It's our differences and our experiences that make us better lawyers and judges. The second thing is, apply for the jobs you want, even if you think you might not get them. Of course, I would say this as a Judicial Appointments Commissioner, but do think about posts in the judiciary. There's a whole range of them. Some jobs that I didn't even know existed until I became a commissioner. There are part-time roles, there are full-time roles. You can work part-time even as a full-time judge. Have a look at our website and think about making an application. The third thing is retain your professional integrity. It matters, and you'll be pleased that you did it. And also your personal integrity. Have the courage to stand up for those in the profession who don't feel able to stand up for themselves. And give something back. It's always rewarding and it feeds the soul. And the last thing I want to mention before moving on is luck. I was lucky. My first pupil supervisor was and still is supportive. Sometimes you'll be unlucky. And I think that's worth bearing in mind. If something goes wrong, if something you want just didn't work out, or if a job you applied for you didn't get, even if you thought you should, don't let that put you off. Try again. Because it might just be that you were unlucky that time, and it may be that you're lucky the next. Baroness Hale, a formidable woman who needs no introduction, when talking about women in the history of law, said, "What lessons have we learnt from all of this?" She said, first, that judges were very reluctant to take the plunge themselves. They found a range of excuses not to allow women into practice until the legislator forced them to do so. Second, that the first women lawyers faced quite remarkable hostility and nastiness. Third, that progress in expanding their number was extremely slow until the 1970s, and then the numbers entering the profession went up in leaps and bounds. Fourth, however, there is still a substantial attrition rate, which means that women do not make it to the senior levels of the profession. Well, that's all changed in the last month, hasn't it? But what she was concentrating on is partner and QC, staying in independent practice. And she said that often women step aside because of family responsibilities. And the fifth was that partly because of this, women have been slower to make substantial inroads into the judiciary. But that too is changing. Tonight, we celebrate those who've made this event happen, those leaders who have, and I'm sure will continue to make a difference, for all they have done. And thank you all for being part of this incredible organisation.
Well, thank you so much. Amazing to hear you speak, Anuja. Thank you for this amazingly inspiring speech. And now we will start our part one. Part one of celebrating a few categories of our finalists and winners of tonight. I'd like to congratulate, before we start, everybody who has been nominated and notified. You have done amazingly well because you have put yourself forward. You have been noticed by everybody you work with. You might not have won tonight, maybe you're not shouted out tonight. It doesn't mean we haven't noticed your work. It just means that somebody, sometimes, is just a little bit better. As you heard from Anuja, try once, try once more. Never give up, our awards will continue next year, and we'd like to hear from you again. The first category we will be celebrating tonight is the Solicitor of the Year Award. The way we will run this next very efficient section of our evening is that I will call some names. When you hear your name, please come forward. And you ought to know your roles, I hope. Once the certificates are given to the finalists, we will have a photograph, and then we will have a photograph and a trophy ceremony for the winner. So, the following people, please come forward. Justin North from our category sponsor, Gareth Peirce. Thank you so much for supporting us. And Caroline Flanagan, who will be presenting this award. I hope she is nearby. Perfect. So this is in the first and next 100 years, we like to do things in a consistent way. So we have some awards with 3 finalists and some with 5, but you'll never hear a very long list. So that's just how we do it, and I'm grateful that you are forgiving of our innovative style of awards. The finalists for tonight are Barbara Cobbett, Jodie Hill, and can you come forward? If you hear your name, come forward. So Barbara and Jodie Hill, obviously I didn't make myself clear. If you hear your name and you're a finalist, please come to the front. If you're absent, obviously we forgive you. And Sana Shafi. So please take a stand here. So, so the winner of the award, Solicitor of the Year 2023, is a neurodivergent lawyer, DEI consultant, training provider, author, and campaigner. She launched the law firm in 2018 with the founding principles of mental health and well-being at the heart. We did not say nobody else can turn up, because it just so happens she has to take center stage. She also created bespoke training and adjusted their targets to help them back up to speed following the maternity leave. The firm partnered with the Jordan Legacy in 2021 to train 100 mental health first aiders, giving profits to the charity to reinvest into its workplace suicide prevention mission, and more recently, Fertility at Work Matters for a Northern Roundtable, featuring prominent local public and private sector leaders to aid the conversation around fertility issues at work. So, the winner is very much standing in front of you. So thank you. Thank you. Maybe everybody who's on the list will only turn up if they're a winner. Maybe that's the latest innovation. Who knows? The next award is In-House Lawyer of the Year Award. It is actually sponsored by my own company, Obelisk Support, which is my day job, and will be presented by Baroness Kingsmill. So please come with... In a minute, she will tell you who the winner is, but we have 3 finalists. Abigail Wilson, if she's in the room, please come forward. Kate Cheetham, who I believe was represented by a colleague, but maybe stuck at work. And Linda Hogan, if she's in the room, please come forward. Yes. Let's find out the winner.
All right. Tonight's winner is the Chief Legal Officer and Company Secretary of a big high street bank. She has been heavily involved in the inclusion and diversity agenda throughout her time in the group, including previously as co-chair of Breakthrough, the bank's women's network, which has a membership of over 10,000 people. The winner is Kate Cheetham.
Okay, so next award is Law Student of the Year. And I'd like to Lucy Allen from Barbie, who's our sponsor, and Vicky Fox who is the presenter of this award. We have 3 finalists. Please, if you hear your name, come forward. Ruksha Jahangir, Amy Evans, and Tabitha Boyton. And the winner is somebody who, as an Alan Overy and University of Nottingham Law Ambassador, has candidly discussed studying and applying for graduate roles whilst battling mental health issues, seeking to break down barriers and encourage equality within the legal profession. Since March 2023, she has been working on founding ABLE, a platform designed to help neurodivergent and disabled students navigate the early career sector. And the winner is Amy Evans. The next award is for Paralegal of the Year. It will be presented by Ella Watts, who's the previous winner. And the finalists, please, if you hear your name, come forward. Kyla Donnelly, Eve Botalico, and Zania Putri. Tonight's winner, when faced with an act of outward sexism in a speech held to the Women's Network of her company by a high-level executive, she took action by strategizing in order to address this matter directly with the individual as well as within the company. Despite being a junior employee, she was not intimidated and took strategic action. In an effort to find solutions in order to foster a safe work environment, she took to mentoring and efforts to ensure women in her workplace were met with respect, and the respect they deserve, and those involved in the incident would be met with constructive consequences for their behaviors. The winner is Eve Botalico. And now, we're moving into the second part, and it will be my absolute pleasure to welcome the Lady Chief Justice herself to address you a few words and to present the Rising Star of the Year Award. Lady Chief Justice.
Thank you all for such a very warm welcome. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Anuja. My best supporter, wherever I go, she'll be saying the right thing. I'm really delighted to be here to help you all celebrate these awards and to be part of the next 100 years. What a great title. What a great title, because it's forward-looking, but it also links back to the last 100 years of women in law that we have been celebrating so successfully over the last few years. 100 years of women in law gave us pause for thought, didn't it, as we travelled through the journeys of such incredible women in the past. Eliza Orme, the first woman to earn a law degree in England, Bertha Cave, Gwyneth Bebb, Madge Easton Anderson, Frances Kyle and Averil Deverill, Ivy Williams, Sybil Campbell, the first female High Court judge, Elizabeth Lane, the first female partner in a law firm, Dame Catherine Fiona Woolf, the first woman appointed to the Law Commission, Baroness Hale, Dame Elizabeth Butler-Sloss, the first woman to be appointed to the Court of Appeal, and the first female law lord, and then President of the Supreme Court, Baroness Hale. One of my personal favourites was, and I make no secret of this because she went to my old school, Elsie Bowerman. Do read up about her. The first female barrister to appear at the Old Bailey, a survivor of the Titanic, an active suffragette, friend of the Pankhursts, witness to the Russian Revolution, first head of the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. Do, as I say, read up about her. Her papers, if you're really interested, are deposited at the Women's Library here in London. So here we are. You have a Lady Chief Justice. No. That is, of course, not what I meant to happen at all. What I really meant to say was that I will most certainly not be the last. And perhaps the next one is right here with us in the room today. Diversity in all of its many forms is a subject very close to my heart. And of course, right now, judicial diversity is right at the top of the list. One of the main ventures in which I'm involved is something called the Judicial Diversity Forum. Like the next 100 years, it recognises that increasing judicial diversity is not something that can be achieved by one organisation, let alone one person alone. We need a range of different bodies, all of which have a really important role to play. So it's why we in the judiciary, and Anuja is a shining example of this, why we work in collaboration with our partners, and why we support all individual diversity activities. It's so essential. And the forum that I'm talking about does just that. It brings together organisations across the legal sector to identify ways to support increased judicial diversity. My personal belief is that if we don't work together, we're never going to make real progress. The progress has to come from the bottom up. To state the obvious, we can't select, or we can only select judges on merit from the pool available to us. Now, if the pool isn't stocked with a proper, diverse range of people, progress in that regard can't be made. But the forum provides strategic direction in the areas of challenging structural barriers to judicial appointment. It analyses and addresses the reasons behind why people's careers progress and why they don't, and fundamentally using and gathering relevant data and evidence. And what we want to do is resolve issues of common concern to coordinate agreed activities, all aimed at encouraging greater judicial diversity. Lady Justice Simler, soon to be Lady Simler, Anuja mentioned her, she's being sworn in on Tuesday, was really responsible for setting up what we call a judicial diversity and inclusion strategy, running for 5 years. It's a very ambitious project, runs from 2020 to 2025, but it's about creating the right environment, it's about supporting and building a more inclusive and respectful culture, it's about supporting and developing the career potential of existing judges, and it's about supporting greater understanding of judicial roles and achieving greater diversity in the pool of applicants. So I'm right behind Anuja saying, please go on the website for the Appointments Commission, look at the opportunities that there are many and varied, some of them will take you by surprise. Please don't miss this opportunity because we need you, we need the best and the brightest people in the judiciary. So, with that publicity sprint, can I just end by saying, fundamentally, as I think everybody in this room will agree, nothing can be achieved unless we work together. That's what it's all about. The professions, the judiciary, all stakeholders interested in the administration of justice in this brilliant jurisdiction. So I say, here's to the next 100 years. Thank you.
So the Lady Chief Justice will be presenting the Rising Star of the Year Award. The finalists, please, when you hear your name, come forward. Brianella Scott. Arina Stelmokaita. Ita Farelli. Laura Thomas. And Yasmin Howbrook.
Congratulations to all of you. Now you've got to stand there and be embarrassed, haven't you, while I read out the notes. So, our winner is a solicitor apprentice at a Magic Circle law firm. During her first year at the firm, she has been an active member of the Gender Equality Network and their LGBTQ+ network. Throughout her involvement, she has attended multiple events to build connections with senior legal professionals in order to share lessons on how to break into law with her junior legal community. She has also frequently volunteered for Smart Start, an access scheme for socially mobile Year 12s. Wow. Our winner is Arina Stelmakate.
Thank you so much, and congratulations to everybody so far. We have a few more to go. In this part, we will be announcing next the Silex Lawyer of the Year, and I would like to call to the stage Millicent Grant, who will be presenting. She is a past president of Silex and a history maker. And the way we like to do it here, the past meets the present and the future. The current president of Silex, Emma Davis. We have three finalists. Louise Fisher, please come forward if you hear your name. Gemma Adams. And Zoe Heron. The winner qualified as a Silex lawyer while juggling a young family. Her tenacity and determination have inspired her colleagues, particularly as she is the only Silex qualified lawyer at her firm. Here she hopes to inspire future female Silex professionals. And the winner's name is Louise Fisher. Thank you. And the next category is Mentor of the Year Award. This award will be presented by Judge Anuja Dhir and is sponsored by AMPA, and the CEO of Sarah Walker-Smith will join us here as well. We have 5 finalists. Melissa Akinia, I think that's how you do awards. Crystal Diaz, or Diaz. Eve Dulab. Judge Bibi. And Sarah Yousefi. And the winner is?
And the winner tonight's winner is a senior lawyer and diversity and disability officer at the Government Legal Department. She has mentored hundreds of aspiring lawyers, lobbied and campaigned to open up lawyer recruitment to Silex qualified applicants and those who qualified as solicitors by alternative means. She also founded the Black Lawyers Circle, an organisation which currently has 1,000 members that seeks to unify black and ethnic lawyers from all areas of the profession. The winner is Melissa Ikinya.
So, just before the next category, which is the Lifetime Achievement Award, we will be watching a short film about the work of first 100 years, just to break it up a little bit. Felt it was really important to create a very accessible format in which we will tell their stories, their personal life stories, in a very simple way so that everybody can relate.
I said, no, I don't fancy the idea of economics, but what about law?
And apparently I said, well, since I can't be Queen, I'll be a judge.
Opened up my perspective, saw law.
I became interested in reading for the bar when I was 15 because I got a crush on a young barrister who lived round the corner from me.
The law was seen very much as a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant male Oxbridge profession. And as you may notice, I don't appear to be any of those things.
And I ended up having to make 150 phone calls to top law firms and in-house legal teams to land my first job in law.
Going back to the story of when the teacher said little black girls from Balham don't become judges, I always wonder if I turned around and say, oh, okay, then I'll become General Counsel of the World Bank.
Getting silk was the best day of my life.
Becoming a peer was to me like winning the lottery without buying the ticket.
My jokes were never funny until I became a Major General.
I think, to my surprise as much as anyone else's, I was successful on the first attempt.
Yes, I'm optimistic. I feel thrilled.
It was just all tremendously exciting.
that needs an update. We have definitely done a lot of things since March 2020. We are on the 8th edition of the awards. Wow, 4 years have gone by already. Without further ado, I cannot tell you how happy I am to introduce this Lifetime Achievement Award. I think it's so important for us as lawyers to remember what makes us choose this career. Not the money, but the justice and standing for what's right. And this individual who will be recognized tonight, you probably all know, but you might not have necessarily seen. And I'm thrilled she's joining us tonight, and she will say a few words. In 45 years as an English solicitor, she has been involved in some of the most iconic human rights cases in recent British legal history. The Guildford Four, the Birmingham Six, the family of Jean-Charles de Menez, who was shot dead at Stockwell Tube Station in a Bengal terrorism raid, and many more. Most recently, Shamima Begum. Gareth Peirce, our winner, studied initially at an all-girls school and went on to Oxford, and everything sounds very, very, as you would expect. She went to the States in the 1960s, and that seems to have been a turning point for her career. She returned to London in 1970 and decided to embark on a career in the legal profession, specializing in human rights. Now, in those days, human rights is not what we think today. It's very much a pioneering choice. She took a postgraduate course at the London School of Economics and qualified in 1978, working with the late Benedict Bernberg. She trained and is now the senior partner of the firm she spent all her career at. She's also a mother to 2 children, obviously grown up now, but it tells you what an amazing achievement to have dedicated 45 years to this important legal work. The case of the Guildford Four made headlines around the world, as most of her cases have done, in fact. But that one ended up in a Hollywood film, The Name of the Father. Very few people could say they inspired Hollywood, I guess. She's being recognized by us tonight for her commitment to human rights and civil liberties, and for fighting to always keep justice in the balance. She's a legendary force in the legal profession, always moving the focus from herself to her clients. She's a solicitor whose battles against miscarriages of justice have changed legal history. We have been inspired by her fearlessness throughout her career and the huge impact she continues to make at a time that the rule of law and human rights continue to be under attack. Her achievements continue to be a huge source of inspiration to others, and at a time of the crisis in criminal justice and legal aid, those coming behind us to take inspiration and feel they can pick up the baton from her to do such critical and important legal work for us all. Gareth Peirce.
It's not intended as disrespectful to say that the word achievement is too permanent a word, too permanent a concept in the context of lawyers and their work, whether individuals or collectively. Instead, what is needed is an understanding of the need for permanent vigilance. Achievements and victories can prove to be illusory. With my own good fortune many years ago to jump ship and escape the shackles of an English education and go to live and work in another country at a time of enormous social, political struggle, the United States, through the 1960s, a revolutionary struggle, the civil rights movement, and to have the chance to observe and write and see the different component contributions to a political revolution, and could observe that there were contributions by lawyers, not the most far-reaching activists, but played their part. And so in the South, there would be lawyers, no office, no resources, not those kind of lawyers, who would go from town to town to be there, to encourage, to support, to argue for voter registration, and would themselves, more often than not, be arrested. And I thought that to be a lawyer could be a way of becoming a tool for revolutionary change. In 1968, when I thought to do that, Enoch Powell made his Rivers of Blood speech in England. A vicious, savage vomiting of racist rhetoric. And I hadn't understood my ignorance of those strands in our country. I hadn't understood, I hadn't known, and thought that it would be a hypocrisy to become a lawyer in a different country if this is what my country could be like. So I came back here in 1970, did law, studied law, joined a very small civil liberties firm. I don't know, was it the only one? I'm not sure. And trying to understand in the course of the work we did, what were the differences and what was the same as this struggle in the United States and the struggles here. There was no constitution here. I had not realized the possibility of doing constitutional law here. And the struggle, manifestly the same, but manifestly different. That the grassroots movements fighting for change would often be fighting as defendants in court. The tables would be turned. So attacks on the West Indian restaurant in Notting Hill, repeatedly targeted by the police, the Mangrove. The trial of the protesters at that treatment turned into a battle for civil rights in this country, and the same with those members of the Asian community who defended against racist attacks when the police would do nothing, were themselves arrested. Their battles became a battle for equality and rights and protection, and drawing on the common law, concepts of self-defense, universal concepts, self-defense and necessity, and acquittals by juries from the communities from which they came, fighting for juries that reflected the communities from which they came. And so what was missing had nevertheless been assembled through social movements, understanding, intelligent strategizing. But what was missing was universal to both the United States and here. And what was missing was what the United Nations magnificent declarations and conventions at the end of World War II had not understood. The United Nations, as opposed to United Peoples, retained the concept of nation states policing themselves. And for a nation state worldwide to determine in human rights who was human and who had rights. And combined with that fallacy in the decades that have followed, a parallel fallacy, concept of exceptionalism, that there are crimes so dreadful or accused people so undeserving of justice that there should be exceptions to how they were treated, how they are treated by society. And that was the experience of Irish men and women in our society for decades, the experience of young black men and women in our society. And at the end of one decade, end of the 1980s into 91, when it was realized after years of struggle that men and women had been buried alive in our prisons in this country, it was a deep shock. And it led to an understanding of change needed in the criminal justice system, as well as a difference of understanding that could play its part. It could play its part in a readjustment, a recalibration of trust for a suspect community that had been treated as suspect to be able to think that there could be justice. There could be justice. Made its contribution to a mindset that there could be negotiation, there could be peace, and there could ultimately be a constitutional resolution of the conflict in the north of Ireland. And those lessons about exceptionalism and no exclusion from the rights that all should enjoy felt like a victory, but that was illusory, because within a very few years, soon after 9/11, all of the same attitudes of thought came back in force. Men detained indefinitely without trial, our government arguing for the use of evidence that came from torture, the concept that you could have secret courts and not tell them the gist of what was alleged against them, and our House of Lords, after years, magnificently pulled back the rule of law and said, Lord Bingham and the House of Lords judges, what we have to fear is not terrorism, but laws like these. A and others, number one. A and others, number two. A and others in the European Court. We established the rule of law, but it is never permanent. It is never something that one can think is for all time. And so, even within years, the hideous events in Syria have caused again the concept of there are people who should not be accorded the same absolute protections as others. And so there are women and children, British women and children, indefinitely detained without accusation, without trial, who cannot come back to this country. And there are moves to reduce the capacity to protest now. And so what we learn is that there is a need always. We have inquiries after the event, years after, to find why men and women were wrongly convicted, to find why we were complicit in taking people to Guantanamo to find why undercover police infiltrated those protest movements in the past. But they do not teach us that lesson, to learn from our history. And so I've taken too long, I'm sorry. But there was an activist in the civil rights movement in the US, Howard Zinn, who said, you can't be neutral on a moving train. If a train's going in the wrong direction, you can't be neutral. And as lawyers, and we're on a train, if we think it's going in the wrong direction, we're not just passengers. As lawyers, we do have tools that could affect where the train is going. And so I believe we are forever on a moving train. Forever the gains can be subverted and minimized and changed. There's always that imperative, and we should understand it. But if you think that nothing I have said is gender-directed or does not acknowledge we're here as women, then that may be right, but that is the point. We're all together on the train.
Thank you. So what can I say? I mean, I have hardly any words, but I can tell you I have seen being on the wrong train under communism, and justice was never served. Maybe one of the reasons why I ended up being a lawyer after all. We will continue in our part 3 with the awards, but I hope you carry this lesson. Remember, you're on the train, check the destination, and you are a lawyer. You are here to keep justice in the balance. So, Barrister of the Year is the next category. It will be presented by Sultana Tafadar KC, one of our winners from previous years, and is supported by the Barrister Group, and I'd like to ask Harry Hodgkin to come forward if he's here. Yes. Again, we have 3 finalists. Sarah Lucy Cooper, do come forward if you hear your name. Natasha Shotunde. And Jessica Powers. Or her representative. I think there is somebody else coming for Jessica, yeah? Okay. And the winner is somebody who was responsible for several initiatives focused on recruitment and retention of the bar, such as the Social Mobility Mini-Pupillage and the Stephen Lawrence Day Essay Competition. Internally, she has put together an Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Committee. It has, at her instigation, commenced conducting an annual internal gender and race pay review for both staff and members of chambers, and has devised an internal judicial applications and KC appointments mentorship scheme, which includes financial support for silk applications. Both of these initiatives have been put in place to increase retention, and in particular that of female barristers. And the winner tonight is Jessica Powers. Jessica has sent somebody else, so we have somebody, but not Jessica, with us. But Jessica will get her award, and that's the important thing. The next award, before we hear from our other guest speaker, Baroness Kingsmill, is the Legal Academic of the Year award, and I think I'm presenting this one, unless somebody else has been informed. The finalists are, please come forward if you hear your name, Laura B., Rachel McPherson, and Professor Lisa Welby. Our winner is the co-lead of the Women in Law project. The project is a collaboration between the University of Glasgow and Glasgow Caledonian University, which seeks to research the history, document the present, and advocate for the future of women in law in Scotland. From hosting events exploring intersectional diversity in the profession to curating an upcoming exhibition, I think we've had that already, I think that was hosted in September in Scotland, she embodies the feminist principles in her academic work. Her legal research also has a feminist focus, and she's currently undertaking a number of projects looking at intimate partner homicide and legal responses to domestic abuse. The winner is not with us, I'm afraid, but her name is Rachel McPherson, and she... As a lawyer who ended up doing something else to my surprise, despite everything I said about my passion for justice and keeping, on the right side of law, I ended up being a business owner and obviously creating a charity and doing other things in my legal life. And I've always been inspired by Baroness Kingsmill because she qualified as an employment lawyer and then diversified her career, and you can just show you how far you can go beyond law. And it can take you as far as the House of Lords. So I'd love to hear from Baroness Kingsmill for a few minutes now, before the last part of the awards.
Well, hello. I feel a bit of a fraud, actually. I gave up my practicing certificate in 2004. So I'm not, and I didn't actually become a lawyer initially. I spent the first 7 years of my career in the fashion industry. I spent a lot of time sitting on little gold stools at Christian Dior, Yves Saint Laurent, and others in Paris and in France, Paris and in New York, telling other people what they should be wearing next year. And then I had an epiphany. And it's not a million miles away, in some senses, from Gareth's experience. I was in New York, and I began to notice the equal pay claims that were being brought by women in the banks. And for the first time in my life, I didn't come from a family where I knew any lawyers. The law had never seemed like an accessible profession to me. It never crossed my mind that people at university who read law were boring as hell. I read economics. That was the sort of punchy subject to be reading. But I suddenly saw that the law could be a means of bringing about change. I suddenly heard an explanation for the anger that I had felt, the unfairness, the sense of injustice that I had felt about so many of the issues that had affected my life to date. For example, when I was 19, I was refused a British passport. I was refused a British passport because I was an immigrant. I was refused because my father nor my grandfather had been born in the UK, and I hadn't been born in the UK. And therefore, at 19, they said, sorry, you're not British enough. I'd been brought up to think of the UK as the mother country, as the place where, you know, justice and fairness and all the rest of it existed. And for the first time, I encountered the real consequences of unfairness in that sense. Of course, I was white, I was female. It was easier for me to then go along to my High Commission at the time and say, look, they won't have me, will you? And they did. And so I travelled for many years on a New Zealand passport. But it was in New York that I first saw the real means by which I could sort of focus my sense of unfairness, injustice, anger, really. And so I went back to law school. As I said, I had a degree in economics, but I'd never thought about law at all. I went back to law school, and I qualified initially as a barrister, but then decided that I wasn't. That was not a life which was compatible with even part-time family life at the time, and so I qualified again as a solicitor. I sat my last law exam on the day my son was due. He had the great good sense to be born 2 weeks later, and unfortunately, I thought he might actually be a sort of great contributor to constitutional law as a result, but he's not. He's doing something completely different, and I'm very grateful for that, really. But I became a trade union lawyer. I became a trade union lawyer because I felt that this was a place where we needed to work harder for workers' rights. We needed to work and improve the unfair ways in which people were treated, employed, and paid. And for many years, that's exactly what I did. But then, after I'd been qualified for 5 years, I asked what were my prospects of partnership. And I was told by my principal, well, we've never had a woman partner, and you're not going to be the first. So, I mean, what's a woman supposed to do in those circumstances? I left, I set up my own firm, and I proceeded to steal as many of their clients as I could. Luckily, many of those clients were themselves senior women in the trade union movement, women who themselves had experienced discrimination, women who had tried very hard to focus on women's issues like equal pay, sex discrimination, and sexual harassment, but had not been able to get the traction within their own unions, and so, or indeed with their union advisors. And so they were very happy to have a woman lawyer setting up my own firm, and they instructed me. And it was, at the time, of an area of law which wasn't considered to be very exciting or very important or very much of a moneymaker. And so I got lots of clients and lots of work, and very happily got quite a lot of publicity, being a, tall blonde, I suppose, but a woman lawyer doing this kind of work. And so we're able to sort of get a lot of publicity, focusing on that area. And it's one of the things that I would say is quite important. If you are up against it and you are meeting a brick wall in your profession, it's not a bad idea to think about how you can do it for yourself. I didn't have the most comfortable of legal careers. I found it quite difficult. I was generally known, and if you look back on the old Law Society gazettes, which I have done recently for one reason or another, I was known as Maverick Lawyer Denise Kingsmill Moves Again. I did. I moved around to a number of different law firms before I did eventually settle. And then one day, I was approached to be our antitrust regulator. And this is the wonderful thing about the law, is that you, as I said, I feel like a fraud sometimes, especially when I hear the wonderful consistency of the career of Gareth Peirce, who's I have been a distant admirer of for many, many years. You can change. You can switch. You can stop being a litigator. I had done 20 years of hard combat as a litigator. I always think of litigation as unarmed combat, and it had been tough. And you have to work yourself up each time for a big fight. But there are other ways of doing it. And I realised that antitrust was something that I was very interested in, competition law, and I became deputy chairman of the Competition Commission. And I have to say, it was a huge drop in pay going into the public sector and working that, but it was fabulous work. I was surrounded by the most amazing people. I had, you know, I had actually lawyers who to access much better lawyers than me, brilliant economists, brilliant accountants, brilliant industry specialists, and I was able to, I chaired 22 inquiries into every aspect of the UK economy on behalf, in my view, of the consumer, always on behalf of the underdog, always on behalf of the consumer, to feel the way in which monopolies and mergers could damage the consumer. And then I left in I think it was 2024, and became an advisor to a lot of companies in relation to antitrust issues. But then I got asked to go to the House of Lords. This came as a total surprise, I have to say. I got this weird phone call that said, if the Prime Minister, would you be prepared to be vetted if the Prime Minister was minded to advise the Queen, and if she was minded to offer you a post, would you be minded to accept it? Tiny bit confusing, but I, you know, said yes, and didn't hear another thing, not another thing, for quite a long time. And then eventually I got a letter in the post with a great long screed of stuff about what I had to do and where I had to go and turn up and swear an oath. There's a lot of other stuff that went on in my life between now and then, but these are the highlights, because what I've been asked to do by my dear friend Dana, who's so amazing, is to try and explain how there is a life after law, or there is a life within the law, but you can do other things. I've sat on boards for many years at all sorts of different kinds of companies. But currently, I've learned what I want to do, really. I mean, I've always felt that I fought from within. I'm a Labour peer, by the way, so that just to set the record straight, I have not lost all my principles, anyway, of fairness and freedom. But I've begun now, you know, I've begun now to really focus. I mean, I've left it a bit late, really, to think more, but perhaps I have focused. But what I'm doing now, mostly, I'm on the board of, would you believe, Zara. I'm on the board of Inditex. I've come full circle. I mean, I'm back in the fashion industry. Well, who would have believed that that could have happened like that? But what I do more, that is how I earn my living these days. But what I also do is I chair the sustainability board in Zara. Sustainability is a big issue in my life. It's a big and important issue in my life. And I work very hard on behalf of that. And this is a huge company. And if you can get them to change, if you can encourage their initiatives in this area, we have done things like changing the formula of black dye, which is very polluting. And we've done a huge amount as far as that is concerned, because we are very big. But in addition to that, I also work on behalf of democracy. It sounds a little bit corny, doesn't it? But democracy is under threat. Democracy is seriously under threat in different parts of the world. It's not just in the House of Lords that I speak in relation to these issues, but I'm also an election observer in different countries, particularly in Africa. I spent the summer in Zimbabwe, which was very uncomfortable, and didn't to observe their election. They're not members of the Commonwealth, but they want to become members of the Commonwealth. Members of the Commonwealth have to be committed to the principles of democracy. There is a report, there is a preliminary report which is presently in the library of the House of Commons, and very soon we'll be issuing our final report. I'm not allowed to speak about the final results of that. I got into trouble by almost speaking about it by asking a question in the House of Lords recently, and so I'm not going to actually talk about that. But the other thing I do, which is on the other end of the protection of democratic rights, is I am a member of the UK Parliamentary Assembly in NATO. Defence is a very important part of preserving democratic rights. And that's the other end of the scale. That is where it's the thing that holds it together. I mean, we can see in places like Ukraine and Russia at the moment how important it is, what it is to be like. We've had conversations about it. Dana knows about what it's like to live without a democratic, in a society that isn't democratic, and how important it is to preserve the rights that many take for granted. There is nothing quite so moving as watching people queue in the rain or in the boiling heat to exercise their vote, and then to come home to the UK and have people say, oh, all politicians are the same, I'm not bothering to vote. It's a privilege as well as a right to vote, and it's one thing that we should all exercise. But my point really today is that once a lawyer, always a lawyer, you know? You may give up your right to practice or your right to actually appear, but you're still a lawyer, and you can still affect change, and you can still fight for injustice. And each of us have to find our own way as to which way we're going to do. I happen to take, you know, a fairly varied and I mean, the things that one does in one's career are many and varied. I wish, in some senses, that I'd had the consistency of career that Gareth has had. I haven't. I've moved around. I've been, you know, I helped set up Monzo. I was the founding chair of Monzo, which was, I think, democratizing banking for people who are unbanked. I've done all sorts of other issues like that, and sat on all sorts of different boards, health boards, which are really important. You know, community health, so important. You can't be free. You can't be a fulfilled citizen if you have second-rate healthcare. So community healthcare, vital, vital, vital. There are so many issues to which you could dedicate your lives. There are so many issues which, as lawyers, you could actually focus. And I think in the next 100 years, if we're not all wiped out by AI, that's what you should be doing. You know, that's exactly what you should be thinking about. You should qualify, you should become the best possible lawyer that you possibly can, and then you should fight and find the area of injustice that you want to fight for, and not just make money for the money makers. Anyway, that's it.
Just 2 words and then more parting outside. We're coming very close to the end. We are running a little bit behind. So the next award is a Humanitarian Advocate of the Year. It's a new award for us, but we thought in the context of what's going on in the world today, it's important to acknowledge the work that's being done. This award is supported by the University of Law. Aruna Verma, please come forward. And will be presented by Gareth Peirce, who is also a previous award winner at our awards. We have 3 finalists. Please come forward when you hear your name. We're trying to get out and party some more. Irina Kravtsova. Mab Saifeldin. And Tetiana Ansupova. Tonight's winner came to the UK in 2007 as a refugee and is now a trainee solicitor. She's worked as a lead university coordinator at Walk Weekly at Lancaster University, exploring topics from racism to violence against women. She also recently spoke at an all-party parliamentary group session on the Darfur genocide, raising awareness on the use of rape as a weapon of war, leading to the sexual assault of thousands of girls and women. She is determined to continue to use her voice to urge for a solution. The winner is Mab Saifeldin. And the last award is the Champion of the Year award. This is supported by Sergeants in Chambers and presented by Kishma Bolaji. I hope she's here. Yes. We have finalists, 5 finalists. If you hear your name, come forward. Jade Ghani. Rina Parmar. Sarah Weiss. Paige Goldthorpe. And Sharon Tennis. And tonight's winner, through her role at the Law Society's Disabled Solicitors Network, has mentored students from diverse backgrounds, raising awareness of diversity within the capital market sector and contributing towards Freshfield Brookhouse Derringer's DI's efforts. Her leadership in the network and her role as co-chair of Freshfield's Enabled Network has been transformative, promoting and encouraging the profession to foster a more inclusive and gender-balanced profession. The winner is Rina Parmar. We're about to close, and I will keep my closing remarks very brief. Firstly, I need to thank all of you, everybody who is contributing to coming here tonight. I know most of you have donated to support the charity. Without that help, we can't continue, so thank you. Also, all of our partners who supported this year, thank you again. Without your support, we couldn't be here today. Clifford Chance, who have hosted us so beautifully again, thank you. It's wonderful. And importantly, to every single volunteer and person who works with the next 100 years, who keep me sane by allowing me to sleep more at night. I cannot kid you not. It really is very hard putting on events like this and keeping a charity going. And it's without them, really, I couldn't do it. So Valeria, Anna, James, my own child, everybody in the room that's here tonight, thank you. Thank you for volunteering. Thank you for being part of the team. My team at Obelisk Support every year put a report out. It's called The Woman Who Will 2023. The Lady Chief Justice is part of the class of 2023. This is about women leaders in different parts of the legal profession that we highlight every year. Every year the number goes up because the years go up, but that is the trend, isn't it? Women leaders are coming thick and fast, and we need to keep that going. So please pick a copy from our side. The production of that report, again, could not have been possible without the support of Baker McKenzie, who pro bono designed this report for us every year, and I thank them. And what can I say to you? Next year is going to be an incredibly important year. It is 10 years since the first 100 years launch. I think it's probably almost to the day today that I captured this photograph with the one woman in the middle that really bugged me and made me do what I ended up doing and brings you all here today. And we plan to have quite a special year next year to mark this decade of change, because I think the change is visible, but it's important to bring it to the fore and really to amplify the voices. So join us next year, all of you, in all your capacities, to make sure the first 100 years and the next 100 years are remembered, celebrated, part of our first decade in making change for women in law. Join us now outside for more drinks, and I hope to see you at the next awards and the many celebrations we plan to have. Thank you all for coming.